Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Cory Sandhagen and TJ Dillashaw. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so we've got a big fight coming up here. Comeback fight for TJ Dillashaw, 2.5 years since we saw him, versus Cory Sandhagen. Now, let me say this about TJ Dillashaw. Man, there was one time when he was the king of the mountain. I mean, you think about it. Went out there, beat Renan Barão twice. Captured the belt, looked great. Almost beat Dominic Cruz. Goes out there, smokes Cody Garbrandt twice. He was looking unstoppable. He's got this style that's captivating people. He's going out there, he's making everything happen. He's just being dominant in his performances, particularly with the last two, with those stoppages. Decides, I'm going to do what people don't do. I'm going to drop down to 125 pounds, a division below me. And I'm going to stop the man in that division, Henry Cejudo. Well, we all know how that one turned out. Goes out there, first round stoppage, gets smoked by Henry Cejudo. And then on top of it, to add insult to injury, as if that isn't enough, gets popped for the dirty drug test and a nasty one on top of it, EPO, 2.5 years later before we're seeing the man compete again. That is a real fall from grace. But he's back. He's here, and we're about to see him compete against Cory Sandhagen. Now, TJ Dillashaw, as a fighter, I've always liked him. I have always liked him. I've always liked the footwork. I've always liked the creativity, what he brings to the table, the way he attacks and moves around, the way he's aggressive. There's just a lot there to like, right? He seamlessly switches between his stances. I like what he does. He's got a boxing-based approach in a lot of ways. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing similar in what he does to a boxer. But what I mean by that is, for all the footwork that he uses, for all the moving around that he does, he still prefers to go in there and get it done with his hands. He can kick, and he's got some good ones, but he likes to move around on his feet, likes to hit you with his hands. That's really his thing. He's also not a wrestler. He's also not a grappler. He's not going to go out there and really get submissions. I don't know if he has any on his record. There's none that I can think of just off of the top of my head quickly. When I think of him not being a grappler, when I think of him not being a submission artist, I only have to think about one thing, and that's when you look back at his first fight with Renan Barão. You look at, there's a point in that fight where he's got Barão stunned. Barão is like sitting on his butt in the middle of the octagon. TJ Dillashaw has his back, gets one arm around him, gets one arm around his neck, doesn't like it, tries to switch it and go with another one, again, doesn't like it. Barão was not even defending. He wasn't even defending his neck. Dillashaw just didn't even feel comfortable. Eventually switched it over and started landing some punches. Fight took like another 3 rounds or whatever it was before he ended up getting the win. You look back at it, and a man who, in a position like that, a man who's well-skilled, not even well-schooled in submissions, but just decent. That's it. The fight's over right there. Barão was completely stunned, completely out of it, didn't know where he was for that split second, and you got his back. Should have been game over. But that's just not TJ Dillashaw's game. So when you think about TJ Dillashaw going out there and getting it done, he's on his feet, he's landing punches. I don't mean to use that to sound as though his game's limited. Because even though all he has is these punches, all he's got is his footwork, that's basically good enough to get it done against almost anybody. The footwork is so creative, the way he moves in and out. He's switching his stance constantly. He's using these feints with his hands and with his upper body movement, his feet. Keeps people constantly guessing. Constantly guessing. Doesn't know whether it's coming or it's going, whether it's going left or right. The way he's got these predetermined patterns that he uses where he'll dart in and make a slight shift to the left and then shoot another punch and then duck underneath and then try to throw a right hand. He'll back up slightly and then throw another one. And it's all stuff that most people, they find very difficult to deal with, very difficult to handle. But it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. The first thing that I think you got to look at is his fights with Cody Garbrandt. He got caught in both of those. Got caught nasty in the first one. Round would have went longer, probably would have got stopped. Now, how was Cody Garbrandt able to do it? It's easy. You look back at his boxing background. He was an amateur boxer. Very good hands. Very crisp. Very accurate punching. Very fast. And very good timing on his punches. See, the thing about TJ Dillashaw is, for all the movement, for everything that he does, he has some predetermined patterns. You can tell when he comes in, it's not completely creative. It's not completely 100% in the moment. There's times where he'll be at distance and he'll pull the trigger and he'll already know 2, 3, 4 moves exactly what he wants to do, and he goes out and he executes that sequence. When it works out great. But if you've got good timing, if you've got good vision, if you can stay calm when he's throwing those shots at you, and you can punch with him, you can punch in between his shots, right in the middle of his movements, that's what Cody Garbrandt did. That's how he was able to catch him. Because TJ Dillashaw isn't really going to be able to change it up on the fly. That's not his game. That's not what he does. So that's how Garbrandt was able to catch him. Dillashaw's tough as nails, incredibly competitive, just won't quit. So he was able to withstand those shots and eventually come back and get the stoppage himself. I mean, that's how much of a competitor the man is. You got to be Henry Cejudo to put him away, right? So Olympic gold medalist. That's the kind of game you have to bring to the table to overpower what Dillashaw was doing. And speaking of that, we're going to have Cory Sandhagen standing across from him. Now, I'm a huge Cory Sandhagen fan. I love what he does. The guy is huge. 5'11", 70-inch reach, massive for the division. 29 years old. I believe he's hitting his physical prime. Just starting to enter that phase of his physical prime where he's going to really start to blossom. And this dude, all the same things that I just said about Dillashaw as far as the creativity and the footwork. You don't know where this coming's going. Switches seamlessly between both the southpaw and the orthodox stance. All of those same things apply to Cory Sandhagen. But to be honest, I actually like it a little bit better. I think Dillashaw overextends just a little bit. I think Dillashaw, in his stance, leans over that front leg just a little bit too much. Those are things that Cory Sandhagen doesn't do. I think Sandhagen actually has faster feet, a little bit quicker, uses lateral movement a little bit better. I love his kicks. I love those low kicks, man. He just fires those things in there. You know, you look at what he was doing against Assunção, you look at what he did against Marlon Moraes. Nasty low kicks in those fights. That's going to play a factor in this one. You know, he also knows how to use his hands really well. He can lead and he can counter. He's got good upper body movement. He's not just some big, tall, long guy that has to fight at range. You know, he can get in there, he can land his shots, he can get out, but he can stay in there and he can also land some shots from on the inside. Now, I really like what Sandhagen brings to the table as far as an overall package. You look at that fight with Assunção. Sandhagen came forward. He was aggressive. Applied the pressure that he needed to apply. Ends up winning the fight. You look at his fight against Marlon Moraes. Complete opposite. He let Moraes be the aggressor. He let Moraes come forward. Instead, he moved around on the outside, backed up to avoid shots, jumped in and jumped out, landed his shots when he wanted to that way. Completely different in that regard. Can you fight going forward? Can you fight going backwards? Can you be the aggressor or can you let the other guy be the aggressor? He showed just in those two fights that he's able to do both those things. He's comfortable in both of those scenarios. Man, that's huge when you talk about being able to, you know, have variety as far as implementing your game plan or handle what the other man brings to the table. I noticed I didn't go into the fight with Aljamain Sterling or the fight with Frankie Edgar. I don't really think, to be perfectly honest, those fights are going to show us too much in the way of what's going to happen against Dillashaw. They were just kind of too short. You know, in that fight with Aljamain Sterling, I mean, he got caught early. Usually when we say someone gets caught early, it's with a punch. He got caught early with a submission, man. They were dry. Aljamain Sterling is great at grappling. Got him out of there. I will say this one thing, though. After that fight, Cory Sandhagen says he felt intimidated by Aljamain Sterling's energy. He said it was funny when Aljamain came into the octagon, it was like his energy, his intensity, it was so much. It just filled up the space. It intimidated me. The fight kicked off. He caught me. He was one of the things that I'm working on is having that energy and being that intense guy so that other people have to deal with it so that I'm never on the receiving end of it again. That's one thing that I think was great. And looking at his last two performances since then, certainly seems pretty good. And then you look at his fight against Frankie Edgar. Obviously ended pretty early, just ridiculous highlight reel knockout with that flying knee. Not a lot really to pull from that except for the fact that the man is pretty good with his knees. He got that knee up there quick, smooth, accurate. You timed it. That's something that you can pull off when you're 5'11" fighting against a lot of these smaller guys. Believe it or not, that's also something that I think may play into this fight with TJ Dillashaw. So, the question is, what's it going to look like when these two step again in the octagon against each other on Saturday night? Man, first of all, I think there's going to be a fast-paced fight. I mean, the footwork from both of these men is going to place them all over the octagon. It's going to happen everywhere. In the middle, it'll bouncing off every wall. The cage is going to be getting tested on all sides. I expect the footwork to be all over the place. But realistically speaking, I think it's going to be a very high-speed chess match. I think Dillashaw is going to be coming out there. Here's the thing. He's going to be rusty. I don't care what anybody says. He's got a very timing-based style. If he doesn't feel the rhythm and the flow of the fight, he's going to be far more ineffective than we're used to seeing him when he's at his best. And I think that's going to be the big thing that affects him. 2.5 years since we've seen that man compete. And they are not throwing him a tune-up fight in Cory Sandhagen, man. They are putting him right into the deep end of the pool with this one. So I think he's going to come out there. He's going to attempt to use all the same type of footwork and feints and everything else that he's doing. But Cory Sandhagen's a moving target. He's not standing around like Renan Barão was. He's not nearly as stationary as Cody Garbrandt was. As if it wasn't going to be hard enough coming back after 2.5 years, Dillashaw's going to have to deal with the moving target that Sandhagen is. So I think he's going to come up short on a lot of his punches. I think he's going to try to cut angles, and Sandhagen won't quite be there. He's going to try to counter. Sandhagen's already going to be gone. And on the flip side of that, I think Cory Sandhagen, man, is going to be on fire. He's got the reach advantage of this one, so he's got that going for him. He's a lot taller. He moves around really well on his own. Like I just mentioned, TJ Dillashaw, I expect him to be a half step behind in everything that he does because of how rusty he's going to be from being out of competition for so long. I think when Dillashaw likes to lean forward on that front leg, he likes to put the weight over his front leg when he's, slightly out of range and he's waiting and seeing what his opponent's going to do. I think that's going to be a time where Cory Sandhagen is going to be able to shine with those low kicks, man. I think he's going to go in there and over the course of 5 rounds, just slowly but surely tear that front leg apart. And for a fighter like TJ Dillashaw, who depends so much on his footwork, so much on his movement to create all of his opportunities, to get that front leg torn apart, oof, that could be really bad news. That could really hinder his game. I also think that, Sandhagen's got the longer legs when he wants to throw the front kicks. Really good on the inside when he wants to be. I think this is going to be the time for him to shine. I think he's going to be able to get TJ Dillashaw's name on his resume as a win. Absolutely going with Cory Sandhagen on this one. I only see one way for Dillashaw to win. One way. And that's over a point. And by points over the course of the round of the whole fight. So over the course of 5 rounds, and I will say we haven't seen Sandhagen fight over 5 rounds. So he's a little bit untested in that regard. Although I expect his cardio to be top-notch training with Team Elevation out of Colorado. But he would have to outpoint him over 5 rounds. With the way Cory Sandhagen's been looking in his last fights, particularly against a competitor like Marlon Moraes, to think that TJ Dillashaw is going to come back after 2.5 years off and outpoint Cory Sandhagen over the course of 5 rounds, I find it hard to believe. I just don't see it happen. If this fight would have happened before he got suspended, if TJ Dillashaw were to take 3 or 4 fights in between now and then this fight were to happen, I may have a completely different outlook on it. But that's not when the fight's happening. It's happening July 24th. It's happening this Saturday. First fight back after 2.5 years. I think Sandhagen comes out and shines and looks great in this one. So let me know what you guys think. Is this going to be another win for Cory Sandhagen where he's able to come back, get a shot at the belt? Or is this going to be the comeback fight for TJ Dillashaw? We end up looking at it like, man, this guy never even lost a step. 2.5 years later, coming back, defeating one of the top contenders in the division. Let me know what you guys think.